Hola chicos! In this video, we're going to talk about the second set of vocabulary for Chapter 3. So, the name of Chapter 3 is, I believe, En la escuela y después, or En la sala de clases y después. So we've already looked at what we do in the classroom, and now we're going to talk about what we do after class, después de las clases. So we know después de means after. And we know that you can access this information that I'm looking at right now by logging into your Blackboard shell, or by getting on eStudio, this is straight out of the book, or by looking at your physical textbook, okay? So, we have los alumnos regresan a casa. Regresar is one of the verbs for this chapter. Now, we know it's conjugated that way because of los alumnos, because it's they, or ellos. So, regresar looks like kind of like regress. So, regresar means to return. And if we looked at this, regresan a casa, we could see that this sounds goofy to us. The students return to house. But really what the message is the students return home. Or the students go back home. Okay? So after class, they go home. Van en el bus escolar. So they go on the school bus. But you'll notice this is more like a van. And we've talked about how in Latin American countries, you're more often to find a van than really a bus. Okay? And van en bus porque su casa está lejos de la escuela. Now, depending on when you watch this video, you might know what está means or you might not. But you might remember our question from the beginning of the year, ¿Cómo estás? How are you? So we can say the house is far from school. So obviously they're not going to walk to school or ride their bike to school if their house is very far. So they're going to go on the bus. Now, remember that you can always click on this.
Los alumnos van a casa a pie porque su casa está cerca de la escuela.
To hear the audio, okay? And that's the same whether you're on Blackboard or eStudio. So, let's look at this word, a pie. So you should have defined it by now. Pie means foot. But we want to make sure that we pronounce all of that because otherwise you're saying pie, okay? So they don't go home on pie, they go home on foot. ¿Por qué? Because su casa está cerca de la escuela. So their house is close to school, so they can walk home. In District 81, if your house is within 1 mile of school, you usually have to walk to school or someone would have to drop you off, right? If you live outside of 1 mile from school, then you can take the bus. I think that's the normal guideline. So, primero, this was one of our really important words we learned for writing. First, van a una tienda, right? They go to a store. We have this van that we learned from the verb ir, and then we have a, which means to. They go to a store. Necesitan, they need school supplies. Notice it's materiales escolares. There is no such thing as escuela materiales. Doesn't exist. All right? So, we want to make sure we're keeping that word order. So they're going to a store because they need school supplies. So now we're going to look at vocab, what happens inside a store. So store is la tienda. La empleada is the person working there. So empleada we can see looks like maybe a little bit like employed. Okay? So that's a bit of a cognate. So she's employed, so she's the worker. El dinero, right? Dinero is a false cognate. Does not mean dinner. Means money. That's an important one to know. La carpeta. We learned this in our school supplies. We know that carpeta is not a carpet, but it is a folder. So it looks like they're paying for the folder. He's asking the question, ¿Cuánto cuesta? So if we know cuánto means how much, and we're at a store, we could logically deduce that ¿Cuánto cuesta means how much does this cost, right? So how much does the folder cost? And she's going to give him an answer, 90 pesos. A lot of countries use pesos as their currency, but we do want to remember that just like dollars in the U.S. are not the same as Canadian dollars, that pesos in different countries are completely different. So what they might be pesos in Mexico are different than pesos in Argentina, are different than pesos anywhere else, okay? So that's important to keep in mind. So we've got José y María están en la tienda. They're in the store. Compran una carpeta. Comprar is the verb to buy. Dan, they give el dinero a la empleada. Again, depending on when you've watched this video, you might be more or less familiar with these verbs, but what you are going to find is this a. This is an example of a personal. If you haven't heard my lecture on the a personal, don't worry about it. If you have, then maybe check and make sure you understand why that a is there. Pagan en la caja. They pay. So they don't pay in the register or where the cashier is, but they pay at. So sometimes in can be used like at, right? La empleada trabaja en la tienda. So this is a logical sentence. The worker works at the store, okay? So if I ask you the question, who works at the store, you better tell me, la empleada trabaja en la tienda. So some things that are important to know is how to ask where somebody's going. So one of our verbs is ir this quarter or this unit, and we need to know how to say where are you going or where are they going. So just like when we learned from where are you, now we're going to learn to where do you go. So that directionality is really important in Spanish. So ¿a dónde van José y María? To where go José and María? Or as we would say it, where are José and María going? Sounds goofy to us, and that's okay. We just have to accept it. Van a una tienda y luego van a casa. So whenever you use the verb ir, you have to have an a. Whether it's a question or statement or whatever you have going on, you must have an a. Okay, so that's important to remember. Also, remember that you might see a dónde as one word or as two words. It's kind of a traditional versus modified way to spell it, and both are technically recognized. Although a dónde as one word is a better. So just keep that in mind. ¿Por qué van a la tienda? Porque, if we look this up, we might know that it says for what. So for what do they go to the store? Well, that kind of makes sense, but I think a better message would be why do they go to the store? So we can deduce that for what is the same as why. So por qué means why. And the way we say because is also por qué. Because they need school supplies. Here's the caveat. You remember when we learned that all of our question words have accents. So we know that por qué with an accent, 2 words is a question. Por qué without an accent, and 1 word is an answer. All right? So question word has an accent, question without it doesn't. So just a couple more verbs here that you're going to want to know. Mirar un DVD, so to watch a DVD. Escuchar música. Notice in Spanish we don't listen to music, we just listen music. Hablar en su móvil. And depending on whose cell phone it is, we're going to change that possessive thing. So she talks on her phone, but I talk on my phone and you talk on your phone. Usar la computadora, that's something we often all do, right? Something I'm doing right now. Navegar la red, or navegar el internet. So you're navigating on the internet or surfing the internet. Enviar correos electrónicos. So enviar is to send. Correo is mail. Electrónico obviously is electronic. So to send electronic mail or to send email. And I believe this is the last slide. Andrés está en su cuarto. So Andrés is in his room. He's surfing the net. Busca información en el internet. He's looking for information on the internet. Now, busca is kind of a tricky word because it means to look for. So we have a tendency when we use buscar to add for after it. We don't need it. It's all built into that verb. Buscar is to look for, okay? So we don't need to add anything after that. And that's the end of most of our vocab from this unit. I believe there's a couple stray words you're going to want to know besides that. So make sure you're checking in your packet that you have all those words there that are in your packet, okay? If you have any questions, let me know. Good luck. I'll see you in class.